Yeah, hey everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm Martin and I work at Google. I've had the privilege of being involved in a lot of our AI efforts in the last few years. And since the theme of this event is how AI is changing the world, I thought I would talk briefly about how we as Google are hopefully changing the world with AI. I have very little time today, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first talk about how do we define AI at Google, and then how do we use it in our own internal products. And then I'll talk about how we're using AI in external products and hopefully in a lot of industries throughout the world. We've seen some really amazing presentations already, so a very tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. Our mission as Google is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So our Google AI team is working to do the same thing with AI. So we're focused on investigating and developing tools to bring the benefits of AI to everyone worldwide. But before talking about what we can do with AI, let's talk briefly about what AI actually is. So at Google, we talk about AI as being the study of basically machines being able to solve problems similar to the way people do, right? So the science of making things smart. And this is a field of research that's actually been around for a very long time, as many of you know. But recently, we've had an incredible amount of breakthroughs. And that's because of advances in machine learning. Now, machine learning is essentially teaching computers to learn to be smart rather than programming them to be smart. Before, we used to program things step by step in order to learn something. And now with AI, machines can learn to do it themselves. And a good example of this is spam filters. Who remembers how bad spam used to be, right? We set all these filters up and you still get countless spam every day. And that's because we would actually hard code like rules for specific spam filters. And so many people would be very smart and just bypass them or find ways to filter through it with your spam. And you would basically half your inbox would still be spam. With AI, an example would be obviously we now taught machines to learn to identify spam by identifying different patterns, and now your spam folder keeps you a lot happier every day. Another example of this is if you were to identify pictures of cats and dogs, right? You can show a machine a lot of pictures of a cat or a dog, and you show them a new picture, and the machine would not know if it's a cat or a dog. But with ML, you can actually teach it to see new pictures and identify based on characteristics, right? That's a very simple example. But this ability to learn from data has amazing implications. So due to breakthroughs in ML, AI has actually affected a ton of industries. And now researchers at Google AI are identifying diabetic diseases, space exploration. We've seen some talks about farming and how it's changing there, predicting natural disasters and many more things like that. So let me talk briefly about some of our products, because one way that we use Google in the last few years with AI is to help a lot of you use our own products, right? So who here has used this product, Smart Compose? Nice. It saves me a lot of time. It's fascinating because it can identify a lot of your messages and basically write the rest for you. But not only that, not only that, but it actually has really smart features as well. For example, if you're writing an email on a Friday, sometimes it will automatically say, have a nice weekend, right? So it's really cool to identify those things as well and saves you a lot of time. So that's just one example. Here's a few others, right? So in Google Search, every day, AI is helping search be more intuitive and also work in several different languages. I just mentioned Gmail with Smart Compose, but it also has other features like nudging and high priority notifications, right? And those are a lot of features that are driven by AI that help you every day in your mail. And finally, translate. So I'm originally from Buenos Aires, so yo hablo español, I speak Spanish, and I know that a lot of times when you're translating things, literally, it can be very awkward in certain languages. But we as Google have a deep learning system called neural machine translation that actually translates full sentences instead of word for word, so that if it's a literal translation, it would maybe not be very well spelled or said in English, but it actually identify the whole sentence. So I thought that was pretty cool. But AI also, outside of our own products, gives us the ability to tackle basically old problems and advancing things like scientific discovery or even curing cancer. And this is something that's, I think, an amazing story about how we are prototyping a microscope to identify several abnormalities. And I want to show you a brief video, which I think is a really powerful story about this.
There's no cancer treated without understanding what the pathology is.
The tissue slides that pathologists use to diagnose cancer contain a vast amount of information. It's very time-consuming, very fatiguing.
Every cell needs to be examined. Sometimes cancer is very difficult to recognize
We had the idea for the microscope project about a year ago. It brings augmented reality into an existing microscope to detect cancers in real time. We're bringing AI directly to the user and meeting them where they are right now.
I think this is going to enable almost all pathologists to have access to machine learning.
Just a few weeks ago, we got it working end-to-end.
It has a camera, so it's seeing the same thing I'm seeing. Information is being fed into a computer, which is doing billions of calculations and telling me that's the tumor, that's not the tumor.
Right now, it detects breast cancer and prostate cancer, but it could also work on any other cancer type that we train models for. The knowledge that you're getting when the microscope points out cancer to you is the knowledge of many pathologists who contributed to training the machine learning model.
We had a team of pathologists that went through thousands of images, teaching the computer what cancer cells look like.
I think it has been very effective at locating areas of concern. It's like getting a second opinion.
It's going to make the doctors much quicker. They're going to make them better, which is going to overall benefit the patient.
The mission is to increase the accuracy and availability of cancer diagnosis and save people's lives. I can hardly think of anything that's more motivating.
So I think that's a really powerful story. I mean, I've had friends and family members affected by cancer, and being able to see that it's actually helping with this, and I'm sure many of you can relate of how powerful that can be, and we've seen so much advancement in that field. Here's another really powerful example in the science field, which is that there is a certain diabetic retina disease that actually affects 415 million people. And the crazy part is this is entirely preventable. So if it's not detected, most of these people go blind. If it's detected early, it can be completely avoided, right? So just think about that for a second. 415 million people, you can avoid them becoming blind. Right? And we're actually using AI to feed millions of images to machines that are now being sent to doctors to be able to identify this in your eye exams. And so you'll be able to avoid this completely from all these people. And that's just another really cool way that I think Google AI is being used currently. So something I wanted to bring up, and one of the reasons I'm wearing this, because it's really hot here, but it did have the logo, so I decided to wear it anyway, is TensorFlow. And TensorFlow is actually our open source machine learning library. So essentially, it's a tool for other people to be able to build on machine learning. And I think that's where you open up endless opportunities, because as Google, we provide a certain tool where now people all over the world, and I'm sure even some of the speakers I was speaking with earlier said that they were using TensorFlow in their products as well. It's really powerful. So for the rest of this presentation, I want to talk about how other industries and other people have been using Google products to create some amazing things. But TensorFlow has essentially been downloaded. It was released in 2015 as an open source project, and it's been now downloaded over 41 million times. And we're seeing things like we just mentioned health, things like farming, space exploration, language detection, animal preservation, and other industries. So here's one example. Is it possible to save a rainforest by listening to it? Interesting question. And that's a question that the indigenous people in Brazil actually had because of deforestation. So there's a tribe in Tembe, which is 2,800 kilometers squared in northern Brazil, and over 30% of their land is actually deforested by cattle ranching, fires, or illegal logging. So they thought to themselves this question: how do we fix this? And they actually, used TensorFlow to solve this problem. So what they did is they essentially took old Android devices and they perched them up on the trees, and they attached them to a solar power adapter and an external microphone. And using TensorFlow, it actually listened for 24/7 about a kilometer away for illegal logging. So it can hear the sound of chainsaws and other things that associate with this. And what it does is it immediately notifies the rangers and the tribe leaders nearby so they can go and report the activity happening. And so you can imagine, you have your device next to you, and because of this kind of DIY device that you would find a tutorial on YouTube, you can actually save the rainforest and other areas in Brazil. And I thought that was a really cool example to share with you. Another one is in the farming industry, and this is one app that's actually using farming and AI to make sense of better practices, and I have a brief video to show you about this as well.
I'm Niels Rutten, and this is my dairy farm on the island of Texel in the Netherlands. Dairy farming is hard. It's a lot of work, and you're working with live animals. There's a lot of uncertainty. Things can change within a day. You just have to be really focused and keep track of it all. The cow's health is of the utmost importance. A sick cow is not producing milk, and she will also require more attention. That's why we adopt the technology. We're searching for things that can help us out. And artificial intelligence can be a great tool to give farmers more insight. The app of IDA helps me to keep track of my cows, so it makes life easier.
IDA is really the dairy farmer's assistant. It starts by a sensor that sits on the neck of a cow. And by analyzing the movement of this sensor, we use TensorFlow and machine learning to figure out what the cow is doing. And we can actually distinguish multiple behaviors of this cow: eating, ruminating, drinking, standing,
Filming this must have been fun.
laying, and walking. So if IDA sees a certain pattern in the behavior, IDA can actually figure out the disease that the cow is prone to get, and she can warn the farmer to take care of her.
The key thing with IDA is that it learns. Using TensorFlow, an open source tool that Google has authored, it learns the behavior of animals and it gets better over time. That helps me to improve the efficiency of my milk production and also improve animal welfare to keep cows healthy and comfortable.
We see farming as evolving. Technology and the farmer are going to work together. About 1 billion people globally are engaged in dairy farming. And by solving some of these problems, we're able to help farmers run a more efficient farm.
And we can do it in a way that is sustainable for us as a species and our planet.
Just going to touch on a few other areas. So one was along the lines of animals. Here's an experiment where we were using machine learning to actually identify sounds of endangered whales all over the world. So those are specific areas where we actually set up audio trackers and we train the model to identify the specific sounds of those whales to be able to track them, humpback whales in particular, and actually monitor and conserve them as well. In the constructing and building side of things, there's a company called Odd Industries that actually remotely monitors construction sites, and with TensorFlow, they can actually monitor certain resources like the use of concrete to actually optimize how much they're using and make certain construction areas more eco-friendly as well. So I thought that was a very interesting case study. And in the language and translation field, there's an app based in Brazil that actually uses AI and TensorFlow to translate Portuguese into Brazilian Sign Language by using an avatar. So you can imagine if they expand this also, the implications, and the team hopes to have this as a new system of digital communication for Brazilians who are deaf or hard of hearing. So this is one of my favorite and most powerful stories that I talked to the team that kind of put this together because I think it's pretty amazing. So that right there is the cassava plant. And if you're not familiar with this, it essentially feeds over 500 million people every day. So when I had to read that twice because it's a lot of people. And you can imagine, I know we saw a presentation earlier about kind of diseases in plants. What will happen if these plants get infected or if there's pesticides and things like that? And so I wanted to show you a video, one more video, because this is one of my favorite ones, about how we're using machine learning to preserve these plants.
Cassava is a really important crop. It provides for over 500 million Africans every day.
When all other crops fail, farmers know that they could rely on their cassava plants to provide them food.
There are several diseases that affect cassava, and these diseases make the roots unedible. It is very crucial to actually control and manage these diseases.
So we're trying to use machine learning to respond to those diseases.
And TensorFlow is the best foundation for our solutions. The app that we've designed can diagnose multiple diseases. It's called Nuru, Swahili for light, the light that farmers can use to see their problems and find solutions. You wave your phone over a specific leaf, look at it, and if it has a symptom, a box will pop up saying you have this problem. When you get a diagnosis, we have an option for you to get advice and learn about the best management practices.
The object detection that we use through TensorFlow relies upon our team annotating images.
We've collected over 5,000 high-quality images of different cassava diseases for this project. We use a single shot detector model on a mobile net architecture. It's able to make predictions in less than 1 second.
Instead of having to implement thousands of lines of code, TensorFlow provides a library of functions that allow us to build architectures in much less time.
We need something that can be deployed on a phone without any connection. TensorFlow is able to shrink these neural networks to be able to fit on your mobile device.
The human input is absolutely critical. We're really building something that augments your experience and makes you better at your job.
So with AI tools and machine learning, you can improve the yields, you can protect your crops, and you can have a much more reliable source of food.
AI offers the prospect to fundamentally transform the life of hundreds of millions of farms around the world.
You can see a product that can actually make someone's life better. This is kind of revolutionary.
What I love about these stories is they really humanize the project, right? We have teams in Mountain View and all over the world, but working on this. But when you see the impact, I think that's one of the coolest things. But obviously, the impact of AI in the world is very profound. And we take that very seriously at Google, as I think many companies should. So as our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man once said, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think it's really important nowadays, especially, to have that in mind. So we've actually publicized principles of AI that Google really stands by. And this is something that we take very seriously, and tangible principles. They're not conceptual. So we try and really relate these at every event and think about these in everything we do. And I'll end with this, which is the AI Impact Challenge, which is an initiative that we're very proud of, that we launched with Google.org, where we essentially funded $25 million for 20 startups, AI companies, to actually work on their projects. And we are mentoring them through that. So the lights are now going down, so I think that's my cue. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll stick around, and I'd love to talk to you all about AI. Thanks.